Please be seated. The court is now in session. As we informed the parties yesterday, today the greffiers of the trial chamber will read the relevant remaining portions of the facts as part of the case 002/01 segment 3. Before I hand the floor to Mrs. Sakalwati to continue reading those paragraphs, Mrs. Sakalwati, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to this proceeding? Sakalwati, Mr. President, all parties are present except the accused Ieng Sari, who is absent due to his health issue. However, the accused requests to waive his direct presence in hearing the testimony of TCW 428. This witness, TCW 428, will be heard by the trial chamber today, and this witness will be available from 10 a.m. this morning and will swear or take an oath by then. Thank you. The floor is now given to Mrs. Sakalwati to read out the paragraphs as assigned to you to continue reading from where you left off yesterday. The paragraph from 113 to 149, 156 to 165, and 221 to 227 that have been assigned to you to read out. You may proceed. Zone Armies, paragraph 133. The second primary branch of RAK was the Zone Armies, usually organized as divisions. Despite being ultimately under the command of the center, they were integrated into the zone administration. Their tasks were closely connected to their zone, including territorial defense, as well as internal security. Zone armies of zones bordering Thailand and Vietnam were heavily involved in the fighting occurring at these borders. Below division level, districts also maintained local forces on battalion level. Militia, paragraph 134. The third pillar of the armed forces was the local militia, also referred to as the guerrilla forces. Paragraph 135. Militia troops lived among the people in the villages and performed duties related to local security. Among these duties were arrest and killings, but also more clearly military-related duties, such as preparations for the defense of the villages and cooperatives. The militias directly reported to the village, sub-district or district committees and were called on by the civil administration to perform security tasks. Communication reporting, paragraph 136. RAK had a hierarchical command structure that was reflected by its communication structure. Reports were collected inside the divisions and then transmitted to the center-level command bodies, these being the General Staff. Commands were issued via the same lines of communication. Central Command transmitted its orders to the divisions, where they were further sent to lower-level commanders that carried them out. Communication between divisions and center. Paragraph 137. Communication between the divisions and the center was continuous, with several contacts every day. The center command level regularly communicated with divisions and relied on the divisions to forward its commands to lower-level units. Important decisions on the division level were to be taken by the center command bodies. Divisions sent reports to the center command bodies on a regular basis, usually reporting on military engagements, discoveries of internal enemies, and other matters. Paragraph 138. Communication was facilitated by various means. One of the most common communication lines was via radio and telegraph lines, including oral communication as well as messages. To this end, the General Staff as well as the individual divisions maintained radio and telegraph units. Messages sent and received by RAK were encoded. Paragraph 139. Messengers were also frequently used to transport messages. Individual divisions had messenger units to provide these services. Paragraph 140. Communication between the General Staff or the Military Committee on the one side and individual divisions on the other side was frequently forwarded to members of the Central Committee. Paragraph 141. Another common means to communicate between the Central Command bodies and the divisions was via in-person meetings. Meetings range from smaller gatherings to larger rallies. Examples for larger meetings are the meetings conducted before the final attack on Phnom Penh and before the purge of the Eastern Zone. Large rallies often included speeches by senior CPK functionaries. Some witnesses report that military meetings were held at the Olympic Stadium of Phnom Penh for commanders of units from the battalion level upwards, chaired by Son Sen. Communication inside the divisions. Paragraph 142. Inside the divisions, communication followed the command structure, with commanders usually communicating with their direct superiors and subordinates. Commanders reported to their superiors on various matters and received orders from them. Every communication was often carried out through the use of portal radios, although messengers, telegrams, and meetings were also used. Disciplined. Paragraph 143. RAK imposed upon its troops and commanders a disciplinary regime that provided for different means of monitoring and punishment. Paragraph 144. Criticizing and self-criticizing sessions were held in military units where troops were expected to criticize their mistakes and also implicate their comrades. This technique of control and discipline was also used in meetings organized by the General Staff. Paragraph 145. Where bad conduct was detected, several forms of punishment were used to discipline troops. Besides punishments inside the military units themselves, troops would be sent to re-education or work sites or were killed. Commanders that disobeyed orders or were considered traitors were arrested and subsequently killed. For purposes of interrogation and arrest of alleged traitors, RAK units either used installations of the center, like S-21, or their own security offices. Participation of RAK in purges. Paragraph 146. As part of its responsibility for internal security, RAK carried out purges under the orders of the CPK Center. Paragraph 147. During the official July 1975 RAK gathering, the chairman of the high-level military committee of the party declared that the Revolutionary Army must defend the country against internal enemies, whom he instructed it was the Revolutionary Army's duty to continue to smash. During RAK meetings of secretaries and deputy secretaries of divisions and independent RAK regimes, the measures discussed including purges of no good elements. Paragraph 148. Deutsch explains that in the period immediately after 17 April 1975, in the absence of any center security organ, orders to execute ex-Khmer Republic officers and others who were considered enemies were carried out by military personnel answering to zone secretaries who received their orders from the Standing Committee. Zone units entering Phnom Penh and by zone and subordinate units entering other towns, such as Pusat in the northwest zone, carried out executions. Involvement by zone, sector and district military forces in local executions continued in some parts of the country throughout the regime. This was the case at the West Zone, Sector 37, and Prey Nop District Security Complex at Koh Kyong, the Autonomous Sector 105 Security Complex at Phnom Kraul in Koh Nyek, and the Prey Damrei Srot District Security Complex and Kampong Trolai Le District 12 of West Zone, Sector 31. Paragraph 149. According to one witness, the decision to carry out purges within the military ranks were made by the Standing Committee, with Son Sen acting on the orders of Pol Pot, Nuon Chea and Tam Mok. He also referred to the existence of a purge planning meetings of the Standing Committee, which comprised Pol Pot, Nuon Chea and Ieng Sary. The same witness reports that the purge orders were conveyed at a meeting of military commanders convened by Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Tam Mok, and Son Sen. Section 7. Factual findings of joint criminal enterprise. Paragraph 156. The common purpose of the CPK leaders was to implement rapid socialist revolution in Cambodia through a great leap forward and defend the party against internal and external enemies by whatever means necessary. Paragraph 157. To achieve this common purpose, the CPK leaders inter alia designed and implemented the 5 following policies: the repeated movement of the population from towns and cities to rural areas, as well as from one rural area to another; the establishment and operation of cooperatives and worksites; the re-education of bad elements and killing of enemies, both inside and outside the party ranks, the targeting of specific groups, in particular the Cham, Vietnamese, Buddhists, and former officials of the Khmer Republic, including both civil servants and former military personnel and their families, and the regulation of marriage. Paragraph 158. The common purpose came into existence on or before 17 April 1975 and continued until at least 6 January 1979. The 5 policies designed to achieve this common purpose were implemented within or before these dates. These policies evolved and increased in scale and intensity throughout the regime. One of the consequences of this policy was the collectivization of all aspects of society. This collectivization involved the suppression of markets, currency, and private property, the prohibition of people's freedom of movement, and generally forcing everyone to live in communal units according to their categorization. This resulted in the implementation of a system which Cambodians have subsequently described in the following way. The entire country had become a prison without walls. Paragraph 159. The person who shared this common purpose included, but were not limited to, members of the Standing Committee, including Nuon Chea and Ieng Sary, members of the Central Committee, including Khieu Sampons, heads of CPK ministries, including Ieng Thiret, zoned and autonomous sector secretaries, and heads of the party center military divisions. Movement of the population, paragraph 160. One of the 5 policies was to implement and defend the CPK socialist revolution through the movement of the population from towns and cities to rural areas, as well as from one rural area to another by whatever means necessary. The movement by the CPK of people began prior to 17 April 1975 and continued until at least 6 January 1979. The co-investigating judges were specially seized of 3 major phases of movement: the movement of people out of Phnom Penh, phase 1, the central, old north, southwest, west, and east zones, phase 2, and the east zone, phase 3. Paragraph 161. One of the objectives of the population movements was to fulfill the labor requirements of the cooperatives and worksites. The CPK declared that it also had the objectives of providing food supplies to the population and protecting it from security threats. A CPK party document dated September 1975 reflects another major objective: to deprive city dwellers and former civil servants of their economic and political status and transform them into peasants, thus preserving the revolutionary achievements. Population movements were therefore a key means used by the CPK to achieve whatever can be done that is a gain for the revolution. Dates and participation, paragraph 162. Prior to 1975, the CPK had implemented a policy of removing people from the towns and cities that came under their control. People were moved totally or partially from urban areas in Stung Trai, Krati, Banam, and Udong in the northeast, north, and east zones, and Sector 505. Publications of the revolutionary flag reflect that the CPK deliberately moved the population from urban to rural areas. Paragraph 163. This policy was implemented in particular on or around 17 April 1975, Phase 1, from the later part of 1975 until sometime in 1977, Phase 2, and from late 1977 throughout 1978, Phase 3. Paragraph 164. With respect to Phase 1, Pol Pot played a key role in the decision to move the entire population out of Phnom Penh. The plans to prepare the reception of the residents of Phnom Penh were disseminated before its implementation. There was further involvement of members of the party center in the development of this plan during meetings in late March or early April 1975. These were followed by meetings during which lower-level cadre were informed of the decision. Some CPK soldiers were informed of the attack on Phnom Penh in advance, generally via their military superiors, in accordance with the command structure. However, others only received the order to remove people from the capital shortly after their arrival. The evacuation of the population of Phnom Penh was not a singular phenomenon, but constituted part of a wider pattern of population movements from cities after 17 April 1975. Paragraph 165. With respect to Phase 2, the plan to send people to the north and northwest zones is evidenced from a visit of the CPK Standing Committee to that area before or around August 1975. This visit gave rise to the following report. The labor force must be increased. 300,000 or 400,000 more would not be enough. The current strength of 1 million persons can only work 50%. It's imperative to add 400,000 or 500,000 more. A September 1975 party document stated that new people needed to be relocated out of areas where temporary over-concentrations of them had resulted in food shortages. The document specifies that a permanent solution to this problem had to be effected starting in November 1975 and adjusted to production requirements. Witnesses and documents provide further evidence as to how the CPK Center was involved in these movements. Telegram number 15, dated November 1975, sent to Pol Pot, describes a decision of the CPK Center regarding Phase 2 of the movement of population. The former head of the Central Zone Telegram Unit, formerly the North Zone, explains that the East Zone had to send the report from the zone to Pol Pot of the center level first and then waited for Pol Pot instruction. Kai Pok, secretary of the Central Zone, formerly the North Zone, received this telegram from the center, not directly from the East Zone. Movement of the population from Phnom Penh, Phase 1. Pre-1975 situation, paragraph 221. Between 1970 to 1975, the population of Phnom Penh greatly increased to several million, due to internally displaced people coming to the city from the countryside seeking protection from the conflict. Paragraph 222. Health service personnel and facilities were of decreased capacity during this period, and services were less available in the countryside than in the cities, largely due to the ongoing conflict between CPK forces and the Tribunal regime. Hospitals in the capital were overcrowded and of varying quality. Health represented under 3% of the national budget at the end of 1974 compared to 5.7% in 1968. Paragraph 223. Although hunger and malnutrition were matters of concern during the conflict period prior to 1975, there are no reports of widespread famine or epidemic risks. This was largely due to foreign agencies supporting the population, although the ability to assist affected communities decreased as the insecurity grew. Departure, paragraph 224. With the entry of CPK troops in the capital, the population of Phnom Penh was made to depart the city from the morning of 17 April 1975, continuing for several weeks, including during the evening hours. Persons generally departed from their family homes located throughout the city. People moved. Paragraph 225. The persons made to leave Phnom Penh were predominantly civilians, including men, women, the elderly, children, and monks. Doctors and nurses were also made to leave, as well as hospital patients, wounded and sick people, and mothers who had just given birth. Entire families were made to leave Phnom Penh, although frequently family members were separated from each other.
Paragraph 226. The precise number of persons who were made to leave Phnom Penh is unclear, although the total figure is likely to be 1.5 to 2.6 million people. Witnesses refer to seeing masses of people traveling in the streets and that the entire city was emptied of people. Before 17 April 1975, the CPK claimed that the population in Phnom Penh and other areas controlled by the enemy was around 1 million. After 17 April 1975, the CPK officially estimated that the total number of persons moved from Phnom Penh was 2 million. Later, the CPK put the number of persons moved from Phnom Penh and provincial capitals at around 3 million, although the same figure of 3 million were sometimes also cited for the population moved from Phnom Penh alone, including by alone. In 1977, the CPK changed their estimation of total number of people moved to 4 million. Initial destination. The civilian population left Phnom Penh by the national roads in all directions, north, south, east, and west of the city. In general, people were not provided with directions nor informed of the final destination other than to go to rural areas or to their birthplace or home village. On occasion, CPK troops made people change their route. The evidence shows that the people left Phnom Penh for most of the zones in Cambodia. The local communities were often instructed to receive the newly arriving population and provide food and shelter, although it was generally not sufficient for the number of arrivals. In other cases, the civilian population from Phnom Penh was either housed in halls or had to establish their own accommodation. Some people became ill from the journey from Phnom Penh or from the condition on arrival. The people who had originated from Phnom Penh were identified as new people or 17 April people or depositee people and were often targeted on arrival based on their identity. The President, Mr. Dao An San, please continue on reading from paragraph 228 to 273 and 274 to 281. Means, An San, means and method of movement. Means. Paragraph 228. The persons enforcing the movement of the population from Phnom Penh were identified by the witnesses as Khmer Rouge troops. They were described by wearing black or black clothes, some with scarves or kromas around their necks. The Khmer Rouge troops were often armed. Paragraph 229. The troops made announcements, generally over loudspeakers or microphones, that the population had a limited time to leave Phnom Penh. In some instances, the CPK troops were reported to have had lists of names and were allocated specific areas of the capitals to supervise the movement of the population. Paragraph 230. Various contingents of the CPK army were identified as implementing the Phnom Penh population movement, namely the North Zone forces, including Division 1 under Commander Redacted, the Southwest Zone forces, the Special Zone forces, and the East Zone Army, and witnesses report that the units had differing attitudes towards the population. Paragraph 231. People did not resist the instruction to leave Phnom Penh. According to certain witnesses, there was no particular violence on the part of certain CPK troops. However, most witnesses state that the CPK troops engaged in threats and the use of force to ensure people left their homes. Witnesses reported hearing gunshots. Paragraph 232. Other witnesses state that the CPK troops shot people dead if they refused to leave their homes. Civilians were also shot in the crossfire targeting Lonol soldiers. Some witnesses reported seeing dead bodies in the streets of Phnom Penh. Others stated that the CPK troops were instructed to do whatever was needed to ensure people left Phnom Penh. Paragraph 233. Ill treatment and acts of violence, such as beating and shooting in the air, were also reported against the civilian population. There are reports that personal property was taken by the CPK troops from Phnom Penh inhabitants. Paragraph 234. With respect to Lonol soldiers, Some were reportedly disarmed by CPK troops and in some instances made to leave the city with the civilian population. On other occasions, it is reported that Lonol soldiers were identified by questioning and taken away separately from the people leaving the city. There was an announcement in advance that Angkar would forgive all the people from the former regime except 7 high-level officials, and that the CPK soldiers requested former Lonol soldiers, government officials, and police officers to report for work for the party. However, these individuals were then taken away to an unknown location before disappearing. Paragraph 235. Some Lonol soldiers were shot if they refused to lay down their arms or show any resistance. In particular, there is a written order signed by Comrade Redacted ordering a list of Lonol officers be smashed, and one witness states that Son Sen ordered the arrest of high-ranking civil servants of Lonol regime, including those in hospital. These people were later killed and thrown into a well in the Tulkok area. Witnesses refer to seeing executions of Lonol soldiers and seeing dead bodies of Lonol soldiers in the streets. Methods. Paragraph 236. Witnesses do not refer to being provided with transport other than limited reference to the use of military trucks. Most people travel on foot, others drove or pushed their cars or other vehicles, including scooters or motorbikes, and bicycles or cyclos. In some instances, boats were also used. Paragraph 237. The CPK troops told people not to take many personal belongings, in some cases specifying it was not necessary because they would be leaving for a short period of time, and in others specifying that it was not possible to take items with them since people had to leave quickly. Most people left their personal belongings inside their houses. For people who were carrying their personal belongings, there was no evidence of assistance provided to them. People carried items on their hands or shoulders in carts or in their vehicles. People took with them items such as rice, money, medicine, school books, and clothing, and they were also assisting those who were sick and elderly. Paragraph 238. There is some evidence that food or other forms of support were provided to the population during the journey from Phnom Penh. There is evidence that certain CPK troops provided some rice for the people to eat, although some of these witnesses also report having to drink dirty water from ponds along the way, and that the CPK cadre noted the names of those who received food and the names of those who did not want to continue traveling. Two witnesses state that they did not see people starving during the population movement from Phnom Penh. Paragraph 239. There is no evidence of the CPK troops providing security or protection to the population along the way. People had no shelter along the way and slept on mattresses on the road, in empty houses and under trees. People were not provided with food or water. One witness refers to being denied permission by the Khmer Rouge to obtain food. Otherwise, the only food available was steamed rice. Some people had to travel through the night with no rest for several days. People developed swollen limbs from the long walk, and there are reports of deaths attributable to the conditions. There is no evidence of the population receiving any medicine. Some CPK troops took property from people as they traveled from Phnom Penh. Paragraph 240. Witnesses refer to seeing corpses along the road of people who had been shot dead. People were killed along the road for small things such as not wanting to abandon their bicycles. Although some witnesses state that they did not see any mistreatment by CPK soldiers against civilians, or they did not see anyone die along the road. Ieng Sary states that 2,000 to 3,000 people died during the evacuation of Phnom Penh. Return to Phnom Penh, paragraph 241. One witness states the CPK would threaten people that they would be shot if they returned to Phnom Penh. Nguyen Chie stated that the intention was to permit people to return to Phnom Penh, and Ieng Sary stated in May 1977 that the cities were repopulated after the initial movement to the countryside. However, and that people could choose to return to the city if they wished, or could remain in the countryside. However, although there was indication that in rare circumstances some people were sent back to Phnom Penh to work, the city was largely empty of people except for limited numbers of soldiers and cadres until the fall of the CPK regime. According to a statement by Pol Pot at a meeting on the 6th of June 1976, the population of Phnom Penh was then more than 100,000. As of April 1977, this included 43,810 provided a ration by the General Staff. Reasons given to the population for the movement. Paragraph 242. During the movement of the population from Phnom Penh, the people were often told by the CPK troops that they would only be away for their homes for a short period of 2 or 3 days or up to a week or two. Paragraph 243. In addition, several witnesses state that the CPK troops told them that it was necessary to leave Phnom Penh for their personal security, and so that the troops could identify or eliminate Lon Nol soldiers or otherwise find the enemy. There was also reference to the anticipated American bombing of the city, although there are also indications that some people present did not believe this. There is also reference to justifications for the movement of people from the city because CIA agents intended to destroy spies to launch a counterattack. Paragraph 244. Witnesses were further told that it was necessary to remove people from Phnom Penh to organize and clean up the city, such as clearing away the ammunition. Paragraph 245. Certain political justifications were also provided. Some witnesses state that they were told that Angkar was waiting for them and they were needed to build the rural economy, to build dams, canals, and work in the rice fields. and that the only person authorized to remain in the city were members of the military working there. Others have also referred to the food shortages in Phnom Penh as a reason for the population movement, and that food was supposedly more plentiful in the countryside. Paragraph 246. These justifications referred to in the evidence of witnesses have been echoed in statements made by the charged persons. It was referred generally in an interview. Paragraph 47. Ieng Sary was stated in an interview with a journalist in 1975, as reiterated at a conference in 1978, that the primary reason for the population movement was food. He states that initially it was thought that there were 2 million people in Phnom Penh. However, it was later discovered that the population of the city was actually 3 million. He states that prior to the CPK regime, Cambodia had received between 30 to 40,000 tons of food a month from the United States, and that the CPK did not wish to ask the international community for aid, but that the CPK would have been unable to transport food from the countryside to the cities. Khieu Samphan has also stated in a radio interview in 2007 that the population was starving at the time, but conceded that there was not enough food in the countryside either, so people ate bananas with rice or manioc, and only limited food aid was delivered from the allies of the CPK. However, in a prior statement, Khieu Samphan asserted that any government recently out of war would have faced the problem of starvation, and he asserted that after moving people out of Phnom Penh, people had enough food in cooperatives. Paragraph 248. The charged persons have also referred to the ideology of the regime as a justification for the population movement. In the face of the food crisis, Nuon Chea has asserted that the objective of the regime was to remain independent and sovereign. Khieu Samphan has also stated that Pol Pot did not want to live under the control of foreigners. The movement of people from the cities into the countryside has also been referred to by Nuon Chea as a component of the socialist revolution. Ieng Sary has stated that the objective was to transform the uninhabited quarters of the city into industrial sites. He also stated that it was necessary to train the people from the cities to endure moral and physical sufferings through hard labor. One witness refers to Tamok, stating that it was viewed as not necessary to have markets or cities, and that all the city population were to go to rural areas to build the rural economy. Deutsch states in interview that the CPK objectives were to turn the whole country into peasants, abolish privatization, and to force the technicians to do farming so as to make them powerless and dependent on peasants. CPK era documents state that re-education was not deemed possible on a large scale, and so it was necessary to evacuate people to the rural areas to stop uncontrollable ideological contamination of the revolutionary ranks, and to participate in the movement to increase production, sustain the population, and contribute to defending and building the country. Paragraph 249. Finally, with respect to security concerns, Nuon Chea has stated that it was necessary to move the people from Phnom Penh to facilitate the military defense of the country from Vietnam to protect the people from war. Ieng Sary referred to a secret document allegedly obtained from the CIA concerning plans to infiltrate the city. Khieu Samphan referred to the perceived need to make the country strong to fight the enemy. CPK-era documents state that if the population had not left the cities, the enemies might have been able to launch surprise attacks from behind. Planning. Paragraph 250. Prior to 1975, the CPK had implemented a policy of removing people from the towns and cities that came under their control. People were moved totally or partially from urban areas in Stung Train, Krati, Banon, and Odong. Paragraph 251. According to some witnesses, the decision to move the population from Phnom Penh was made in February 1975 and was a deliberate plan of the CPK senior leaders. According to a former East Zone cadre, this decision was followed in February 1975 by orders from Pol Pot that all districts and sectors should prepare by building houses to receive people from Phnom Penh. Paragraph 252. One witness explained that in early April 1975, a meeting took place at Pol Pot's office in Tang Pun village, Kampong Trolai Le district, Kampong Chnang province, which was focused on the plan to move the population from Phnom Penh. Although there was no official record taken of the meeting, Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan each participated in the meeting and took their own notes. The commanders were told to set up meetings when they returned to their sectors and make plans to evacuate the people from the cities under their responsibilities. This information was subsequently published in the Revolutionary Flag and the Cambodian Front Flag and was issued to all party members, although there is no known existing record of such publication. Paragraph 253. An additional witness refers to a coordination meeting prior to 17 of April 1975, to which all the CPK commanders of his unit, then the North Zone Division 1, later Center Division 310, were invited, as reported to him by Redacted, the commander of his battalion. Another witness states that about 1 month before the entry into Phnom Penh, a meeting was held in Phnom Saw, the headquarters of the CPK military command of Kampot. The Chief of Staff, Redacted, of the Southwest Zone Sector 35 chaired the meeting, and the Southwest Zone Secretary, Tamok, stated that it was not necessary to have markets or cities and that all people must be evacuated from the cities to the rural areas in order to build the rural economy in 2 days after occupying the city. Paragraph 254. Some witnesses state that Commander of Division 2 of the Southwest Zone attended a meeting in upper echelon CPK members where it was said that Phnom Penh had to be evacuated to find Lonal elements. This information was then disseminated from this meeting down to the regimental and battalion levels. Paragraph 255. Former low-level CPK cadres also state that they were informed in advance of the plan to remove the people from Phnom Penh. One CPK soldier was told that Angka had a plan to evacuate the people to their birth districts. Another witness states that North Zone Division 1 Secretary redacted made an order to his group regarding the movement of the population about 3 days before liberation, whereas another former soldier also refers to being informed by redacted 3 days before the attack on Phnom Penh. Paragraph 256. However, other low-level CPK cadres also state that there were no prior instructions. Furthermore, some soldiers were only told to commence moving the population after being in the city for several days. Paragraph 257. CPK soldiers also received instructions from their superiors to move people from Phnom Penh through the military chain of command. Division 310 North Zone 1, 2nd Regiment, letter 723rd, received the order to evacuate people from the commander name redacted and also from the commander redacted. CPK soldiers also referred to the upper echelon and Angka as issuing the instruction to leave the city.
Paragraph 258. With respect to the involvement of the charged persons in the decision-making process, Nuon Chea was involved in the military planning of the CPK regarding the attack on Phnom Penh, as witnessed by his participation in meetings with military leaders. In a statement to a journalist, Nuon Chea stated that the decision to evacuate people from cities was made by the party center. At that time, individuals each helped a little to originate ideas. It was combing this with that. Nuon Chea further stated that we attacked and we took military bases inside. So, by 17 April 75, liberation, the army went in and completely liberated Phnom Penh. Ieng Sary stated in a written statement in 1996 that the decision was made by Pol Pot without his knowledge, although he states he attempted to dissuade Pol Pot, stating that, in 1974, I talked with Pol Pot that taking Phnom Penh out of Siem Trang and Krati was easy because there weren't many people, but evacuating people out of Phnom Penh would not be so easy. Everything must be so roughly arranged because there were millions of people. Ieng Sary has also stated that all decisions were made by the committee of the four, including himself and Nuon Chea. The evacuation of people from the cities did not involve my participation in the decision. Upon return from Peking on 23 of April, I saw that the town had already been deserted of its inhabitants. According to Ieng Sary, the authoritative decision to evacuate Phnom Penh was made in late March or early April 1975. Khieu Samphan stated in a radio interview that he was against the population movement, but that it had to be done for the good of the city dwellers, and he stated in another interview that such steps were thought and planned by the Standing Committee. Ieng Thirot stated in an interview with Elizabeth Baker in 1980 that she did not know when the Phnom Penh evacuation decision was made because she was elsewhere at the time. Paragraph 259. With respect to the presence of the charged persons in Phnom Penh, Nuon Chea left the former CPK headquarters on 17 April and arrived in Phnom Penh on or around 20 April. Ieng Sary stated that he arrived in Phnom Penh on 23 April 1975 from Peking. Ieng Thirot stated in an interview with Elizabeth Baker that she arrived in Phnom Penh around June, but that she knew of the evacuation before she arrived. And Khieu Samphan stated that he entered Phnom Penh 7 to 10 days after 17 April 1975. Paragraph 260. Based on the foregoing evidence, the decision to move people from Phnom Penh was made largely by Pol Pot in February 1975, with plans already disseminated to prepare the reception of persons from Phnom Penh that same month. Further involvement in the development of this plan by members of the party center also took place through meetings in late March or early April 1975, including the participation of Nuon Chea, Khieu Samphan, and Ieng Sary. Although Ieng Sary was out of the country at the time, there is evidence that he received communications of decisions and that he had already discussed the matter with Pol Pot in 1974. There were then meetings with lower-level cadre to disseminate this decision, and some CPK troops were told in advance of the attack on Phnom Penh. However, others were not informed until they received the order to remove people from the city. Movement of the population from the central, old north, southwest, west, and east zone. Time and location. Paragraphs 262. Around September 1975 and continuing into 1976 and 1977, a large number of persons were moved from the central and southwestern parts of the country, which, applying the CPK's system of identifying administrative boundaries, encompassed the central and southwest zones and parts of the west and the east zones, the provinces of Kondal, Kampong Thom, Ta Keo, Kampong Speu, Kampong Chnang, and Kampong Cham. Most of them were sent toward the CPK then designated Sector 106. It is Siem Reap Sector, Sector 103, Pravi Hir, and the Northwest Zone, including locations in today's provinces of Battambang, Pusat, and Montier Mien Chey, or sent toward the CPK designated the Central Old North Zone, today's Kampong Thom and parts of Kampong Cham provinces. Paragraph 263. Furthermore, there is evidence of other movements of population over the same period of time, such as from or within the East Zone, Pre Vang and Svai Rieng, to Krati, Sector 505, within the Central Old North Zone, or within Battambang Province. Most witnesses state that people were moved several times before reaching their final destination, including a number of the persons who had initially been moved from Phnom Penh. People moved. Paragraph 264. It is difficult to estimate the number of people moved from central and southwestern Cambodia to the north and northwest zones between late 1975 and 1976. A document of the Standing Committee dated August 1975 refers to the need to add 400,000 or 500,000 people to the population of the northwest zone, and also to relocate an unspecified number of people to the then North Zone. According to a September 1975 party document, 500,000 people were to be relocated to the northwest, 20,000 to Previher, and others to Kampong Thom in the North Zone and certain sectors of the East. A telegram dated November 1975, telegram number 15, indicated that 50,000 people were to be moved from the East Zone. According to the evidence of the former railway operators, it appears that thousands were sent by train through Phnom Penh to their destinations in Pusat and Battambang in the northwest zone. Paragraph 265. According to most other witnesses, some of whom were moved, children, women, elderly, and entire families were moved. Some were connected to the Lon Nol regime. Others were considered as new people, including people who had previously been moved from Phnom Penh. Some witnesses state that only new people were told to leave. One witness refers to the movement of the Chinese and Kampuchea Krom minorities. Paragraph 266. A number of Cham people were also amongst the persons moved. This occurred in late 1975 after the Cham rebellion in two East Zone locations. Many Cham people were moved from their home villages in Kampong Cham province and sent to other various villages within the same province. Some were sent further to villages in the provinces of Kratie, Kampong Thom, and Battambang. Telegram number 15 and other evidence suggests that a decision was made by the CPK Central Committee and subsequently implemented to relocate thousands of Cham people to the north and the northwest zones. Means and method of the population movement, paragraph 267. People were moved by military or civilian truck, train, boat, ox cart, tractor, or had to walk. In many cases, it was a combination of these various means, depending on the destination. Most witnesses felt threatened or forced to leave. People who thought they were being given a choice would still leave for fear of being arrested or executed. There is evidence that some people were tied up or had a gun pointed at them, whilst others state they were neither tied up nor mistreated or beaten. Some witnesses state that they were permitted to pack some belongings or a little food before departing. Paragraph 268. The people who were moved, including Chams, were organized into groups. Some people were separated either when departing, during the journey or upon arrival. A former local cadre states, "We did not have a policy that prohibited the new people from living with their relatives who were the base people." A number of witnesses declares that the Cham people were dispersed through Khmer villages, with only a minority of Cham people allowed in each village. There is evidence that Cham men, women and children were split up and moved to different places. Some Cham witnesses, however, state that they remained with their families throughout the movements of population, or that they were subsequently allowed to join their families. Others indicate that whilst the majority of Cham people were moved, a small number were required to remain in their home villages. 3 witnesses explained that they were made to live in the open spaces under the houses of Khmer people. 2 others state that the elders and religious leaders in their village were arrested and killed before the movement of the population occurred. Paragraph 269. Travel time could take 1 or several days with stops on the way. People could rest a few minutes, overnight, or a few days to 1 week, depending on the distance and the journey. People would travel during day and or at night, the vast majority in very poor physical condition. Many witnesses explained that people were packed into crowded train carriages, onto tracks or boats. People were given little or nothing to eat or drink during the movement of population or upon arrival. Although one witness said that CPK soldiers provided bread before people were put on the boat. Medicine also was lacking. People would die before, on the way, or after the journey from starvation, because they were too old or too weak or from disease. Witnesses also state that arrest occurred in the context of these movements of population. Paragraph 270. Some people disappeared during the movements. One witness explains having been told at a meeting that those who would refuse to leave would be sent for re-education from where people never returned. Paragraph 271. There is consistent evidence that local leading CPK cadre were in charge of the implementation at both departure and reception stages. At departure, they will receive instructions from the upper echelon, although one witness states that the decisions to select villagers to be moved were made in secret by the platoon leaders. People who would ask questions would be threatened. According to some witnesses, local CPK cadre were given lists of names and would call meetings where these names would be read out and would also determine how people would be transported. Paragraph 272. Troops, militiamen, or security personnel supervise the movements of population. Most witnesses report their presence at all stages of the movement, at departure, during the movement of population, guarding people on boats, trucks, trains, or ox carts, and upon arrival. Conversely, a few witnesses state that they were not always escorted by armed forces. Paragraph 273. In Battambang or Posat, most moved persons would arrive by train. The organization of the railway network was clearly and hierarchically defined, with the Phnom Penh Railway Unit at the top of the hierarchy. A former railway operator in Battambang reports that the trains were escorted by armed soldiers and that militiamen were in charge after the arrival of train. His impression was that all the transportation was organized by the higher level. Two former railway operators explained that 3 soldiers managed the station's communication network in both Pusat and Battambang. According to the witnesses who operated the railways in Battambang and Pusat, the CPK cadre in charge of the railway stations reported directly to the Phnom Penh Railway Unit, further confirming that the CPK Center was kept informed of these movements of population. One of these witnesses explains that as a party member, the cadre in charge of Pusat Station would attend study sessions in Phnom Penh. Paragraph 274. Local leading CPK cadre would receive people and assign them to cooperatives. Some witnesses state that they were questioned by CPK cadres about their biographies upon arrival. One civil party explains that at one point she was given the opportunity to choose the cooperative where she wanted to go, and she was subsequently sent for re-education further to the rest of her husband. Regarding people sent to central parts of the country or to Kratie, relevant witnesses gave similar accounts. Return. Paragraph 275. Most of the people who were moved and survived the DK regime returned to their homes or native villages as soon as they could. Some witnesses found that their old villages were deserted, houses destroyed, and that grave pits had been dug. Witnesses state that it was not possible for the population to return to their home villages during the decay regime. Reasons given to the population for the movement, paragraph 276. A document of the Standing Committee dated August 1975 pertains to the visit of the Standing Committee to the North-West Zone. The report insists on the need to develop rice production in the whole of the North-West Zone, with ANCA delivering its directions regarding, inter alia, economic and crop diversification, and stating that the North and the North-West zones had a good quality, such as better paddy land and rice to sustain new people. A meeting minute of the Standing Committee dated July-August 1976 and containing the CPK 4-year plan insists on the need to focus efforts on rice production. Paragraph 277. A number of the witnesses who were moved were told that they were being sent to an area where there was more food and fertile land, or because there was a shortage of labor. One witness states that people were being told that they had to work for the socialist regime. Upon arrival, people were sent to work in cooperatives on building dams and canals or on rice farming. Paragraph 278. A former local CPK cadre explained that the central policy was to remove the new people from the east when the war broke with Vietnam in late 1975 or early 1976. The new people had to be evacuated because the war broke out at the border. Planning, paragraph 279. Witnesses and documents provide evidence as to how the center was involved in these movements of the population. The decision to send people to the north and the northwest zones of the country appears to have been made following the visit of the CPK Standing Committee to this area around August 1975, and a party document dated September 1975 discusses its implementation. Paragraph 280. Telegram number 15, dated November 1975, describes a high-level decision of the party regarding movements of population, which, according to numerous and consistent witness testimonies, was subsequently carried out. This telegram was sent by redacted to Pol Pot and copied to Nuon Chea, Brother Doon, Secretary of the 870 Political Office, and Brother Jam, Office 870. One witness who translated telegrams for Office K1 during the DK regime states that the chairman of the telegram unit made the decision to copy this telegram to Nuon Chea, indicating that this telegram was originally sent to Pol Pot alone, but the person in charge of the telegram knew that this matter must also be sent to the person who was in charge of the people, like Nuon Chea, in order to find a solution. This witness also refers to the involvement of the Standing Committee in the resolution of the problem. Another witness, former chairman of the Central Old North Zone Telegram Unit, explains that the East Zone had to send the report from the zone to Pol Pot of the center level first, and then waited for Pol Pot instruction. Kai Pok, Secretary of the Central Old North Zone, received this telegram about this matter from the center, not directly from the East Zone. Paragraph 281. Telegram number 15 specifically refers to a problem raised by the movement of Cham people from the East Zone and reads, more than 100,000 more Islamic people remained in the East Zone. In principle, their removal was to break them up in accordance with your views in your discussions with us already. But if the North refuses to accept them, we will continue to strive to persevere in grasping the Islamic people. This happened a few weeks after the rebellion of Cham people in Kopal and Svai Klang. When read in that context, this document suggests that the underlying reason for the movement and planned separation of the Cham people was to address the security concern they represented, illustration of the CPK policy to break up the Cham. Thank you, Grafie. The time is now appropriate for a 20-minute break, and we shall resume at 11:15. Lead co-lawyer for civil parties, you may proceed. Counsel. Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors. Good morning, parties, and everyone in the court. My observation regarding the readout by the graphic as instructed by the President when it comes to the structure and the movement of phase 1 and phase 2, two paragraphs in relation to paragraph 161 and 282 were not read out by the graphier. it could be the concerns related to any of the documents of the civil parties. And for that reason, I have two questions for Your Honor. For the reason why there was no readout of paragraph 161 and 282 respectively related to the civil parties. And number two is that what would be the consequence of the not readout of these two paragraphs regarding the facts raised by the civil parties in their application? Thank you. The court is now adjourned.
Sure.